Provincial chairperson of Sasco in Limpopo, Togoloho Mokhaga Mpatlele, joins me in studio to talk about plans to support students. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, greetings, ma'am.
Does Sasco think that universities should allow the walk-in applications?
No, as the South African Student Congress, we've been very clear that the phenomenon and actually the whole matter of walk-in applications does not begin or is not unique to the 2018 academic year. And so we've been clear that there should be systems that enable all prospective students to have a better chance of accessing the system with the proper processes that are there in the university. Hence our call that was very clear and unequivocal that we need the extension of the applications to include prospective students who could not apply in time due to other objective and subjective considerations.
You mentioned some students that experienced online issues. What kind of support will Sasco offer students during this period?
We've been very clear that with the usage of online systems, we need to appreciate the deficiencies in the system, the way it is slow, the way it is not efficient, and therefore must encapsulate it very clearly with dedicated IT centers that must be able to appreciate that the walk-ins must be able to be accommodated in that regard. So upon arrival in the campuses, our prospective students must be embraced with a particular arrangement that must enable them to swiftly be able to register. The inability of the universities to provide such initiatives will lead into chaos. That is why we are saying, particularly in Limpopo, when you go to Teflop, the whole of yesterday the system was off because they have not been better prepared for the process, and that if it is to continue, it might lead to a possible stampede. That's why we are saying the process of late applications must be coupled with the proper systems that must enable a swift process to avoid any possible chaos. Because unlike other organizations who just speak recklessly to score political points, ours is a dedicated process of a proper system that must enable children of the working class and that of the poor to properly access the system.
Interesting that you mentioned the Stampede scenario, which could possibly happen. UJ 2014, we know that there was a stampede that occurred, one student died. Now, considering how vandalism has also affected schools within the Limpopo region and also the tensions that currently do exist, what advice do you have for students who want to approach this issue in a peaceful manner, at least?
Indeed, our institutions of higher learning as microcosms of society and as centers of knowledge production would be met by particular opportunist elements who will want to speak genuine issues but not addressing the code. But as the South African Student Congress, we've been very clear and unequivocal that it must be that our prospective students are given a fair chance to be able to be included in the category of late applications. We are urging students to follow the processes. Those of students who can be able to apply online, they should be able to do so. Those that arrive in campuses, they must be able to be marshaled correctly. That is why, as part and parcel of the Right to Learn campaign, we have our own students that are there who are volunteers to assist and avoid all chaos. Because we believe that the process must never lead to anyone losing his or her life because they want to access higher education. And we are clear that the process, together with the institution and the principals and vice chancellors, must be well coordinated to ensure that there is no loss of life, there is no any other thing that can affect a possible prospects for that. So we are saying that our call is coupled with a proper alignment of what is the processes and the proper way of applying. So we are clear that it must be that extension that embraces the prospective students, but in an orderly way, not in a disorderly way like other populist leaders are suggesting.
Togoloho, you mentioned Sasco is calling for an extension of the application deadline. Students who have passed matric but have not applied to universities due to lack of funding, what do you suggest they do at this point?
The South African Student Congress as the only hope of students in higher education has been very clear that as part and parcel of what we are calling, that we are happy that December of recent, the president of the country has resolved that we are now starting to face in fee-free higher education. That is part and parcel of the bigger solution to say we fight against any means of blockages, be it financial or academic. In this instance, your own prospective learners who must then be first years in this academic year of 2018 must be enabled to apply and be able to register. And with those categories of NSFAS, they must be able to register. We believe that since the intervention of the increase of the bracket of NSFAS, we have addressed the question of the missing middle, and therefore the question of the children, offsprings of the working class and the poor should be addressed. So as the South African Student Congress, we are happy that the pronouncement has been made by the president of the country, and we are happy that now it's about implementation, and our role is to agitate, shape, and monitor the implementation. That's why our ground forces in the campuses must be able to discharge that responsibility, so that institutions that act outside what the president has pronounced were able to take them head on and be able to ensure that children of the working class and the poor access education and are able to address the triple challenges in our economy.
Just a little flip of the coin here. I mean, in today's headlines and some of the newspapers, we know that universities were not taking new applicants as students had failed to apply in time. Based on passing matric and developing certain skills as well as honing certain skills in that area, why have some failed to adhere to the admission requirements of applying at this point? What in your opinion, has helped to facilitate that?
No, it is a conglomeration of many factors, and so have indicated that our role as the student vanguard is to create conditions that must enable even those that could not, as a result of their limitation of knowledge from deep rural areas, as a result of many other factors given the background. You must know that particularly in the province of Limpopo, the greater geographic spread is composed of those that are at the deep end of the rural areas. So it must be themselves who are also enabled, because most of them has even passed very well, as you could see even the results of Limpopo in terms of the top achievers. So we are saying that it must be a conglomeration that we address and allow, and it's not for the first time. It's not immune to the academic year of 2018 that we make provisions to enable late applications. So it owes to a variety of factors, but regardless of that, as the student movement, as representatives of the primary stakeholders in our universities, our concern is that we must be able to enable all these prospective students to get a fair chance, hence provisions ought to be made that we are able to enable them to access education and deal with the inherited poverty cycle that they did not choose to be, but found because of those material conditions.
2018, as this process unfolds once again, do you think higher education is feasible at this point? How would you advise government to go about it in raising these funds?
The South African Student Congress is the biggest student movement, not only in South Africa, but in Africa. Has been very clear that even when we made submissions to the HERE Commission, we've been very clear that we do not want systems that will collapse public higher education, because we will not have anywhere to go as children of the working class and the poor. Hence, we have been very systematic in approach and said it must be faced in phases. We can't just have a holistic, like others are suggesting, with little knowledge of higher education. We need to have a proper plan. That's why we're saying there must be a starting point. There must be a first phase of implementation. We deal with those that are really at the periphery. We deal with, and gradually, we should be able to move towards a comprehensive approach to make sure that we address the question of education being a commodity. That's why the Right to Learn campaign of Sasco seeks to address the issue of access. But as you have accessed the system, we must be concerned that will you be able to have conducive learning environment and be able to succeed. And that is part and parcel of what informs this important Right to Learn campaign. As we got the line of march from the president of Sasco, President Avela Mjajuba.
Togoloho, in conclusion, running out of time, but any closing comments with regards to the higher education authorities who are obviously bracing themselves for possible clashes in the wake of the EFF's call for walk-in applications?
No, in conclusion, we are saying that nobody must use this period of registration for populist ends. We are saying that, and we are very categorical that it must be that when the president announced that there is going to be a rollout of a fee-free higher education, it can't be over a blink of an eye that it is complemented by expansion of universities. That the expansion of universities is not a responsibility of managers of universities, but it is a responsibility of government. And Sasco has clearly called for the introduction of new universities and even TVET colleges in every municipality, so that we are able to deal with the issue of capacity. We have made it very clear that the TVET college sector must be the first choice. It must not be that I, from the village of Rampatlele, after passing well, after not getting a space in the University of Venda, then I go back to consider a TVET college as a second option. So we are really dealing with this societal perception and driving this paradigm shift as the student vanguard.
All right, thank you very much for joining us. Togoloho Mpahlele joining me in studio, chatting about the plans to support students, of course, provincial chairperson of Sasco in Limpopo.